most people, their biggest desire in life, what's getting in their way, is their desire to look good. So men want to be respected. That's their number one need, desire. That's everything to a man. He wants to be respected. How does he go about getting respect?
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher.
Thanks all for tuning in to Dreamcatchers, where we make things happen. Dreamcatchers was formally launched to unlock the hidden potential in successful, self-motivated individuals who desire to take their life's work to the next level but need support to evolve. We are a collective group of professionals with various backgrounds that use our talents to assist those individuals in realizing their wildest dreams by providing education, inspiration, and direction. This podcast is where we share the lessons we've learned along the way to catching our dreams and give you some context around the how and the why to each approach to put you further ahead on the journey to catching your dream. Are you ready?
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dreamcatchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome. I've got the pleasure of having Jack Gibson with me today. Jack, what part of the world are you in, man?
I'm in Michigan, Jerome. I'm born and raised in Ohio. Moved to Michigan about 20 years ago. Met my wife here, and that kind of made me to stay put, right? Settle down.
My daughters, we were watching a movie, and I was like, it's always either about the woman or the money. Like it's always the women or the money.
One of
like,
those two. It's got to be those two.
It's like, yeah, guys are pretty strange creatures. It's one of those two things.
Right.
So we do things a little different here. If the listeners want to get in contact with you after they hear this amazing story, what's the best way to do that?
My website is Indestructible Wealth, myindestructiblewealth.com. I also have a podcast, same name, and everything is kind of housed centrally right there on my site, my blog, my contact info. So it's all right there in that ecosystem.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, how impressive is Indestructible Wealth? We have to dive pretty deep in on that today. And so I don't read bios here. It's all you telling the story. Kind of, how did you get to the place where you started talking about Indestructible Wealth?
Well, I've made a lot of mistakes, right? And, I started in business back when I was 19 years old. I was a freshman in college. My parents were amazing. No disrespect to them whatsoever, because they raised me with incredible work ethics. Their goal for me in life was always go to school, study hard, get good grades, get a job, work your way up the corporate ladder. That was kind of always what they trained and taught me to do. They had done that very successfully themselves in both their careers. But I always knew, like in my heart, I wanted to be like my wealthy uncle who had 3 businesses. He farmed, he had a $1 million insurance book. He started another side hustle. And he just accumulated multi-million dollars of wealth by the time he passed. And so I said, okay, that's who I am inside. Like, I'm born an entrepreneur. I don't know where the genetics came from, but that's what I always wanted to do. So, I was sitting in my dorm room one day, another college student came through passing out flyers about a direct sales opportunity in nutrition. And at first I'm like, no, I don't want to sell anything. I don't want to do that. I want to be a college student, right? And I got that, I thought about that, sat on that flyer for a few days, and then we started up a conversation. And then that led me to get started with him as in the business. It's a multi-level marketing business. And I built that up through college, and it became very successful. And even 24 years later, I still have that business today. And then since then, I've expanded into other opportunities as well.
Wait, you actually made money in multi-level marketing? That's unheard of.
Right. Well, here's my kind of like belief system on that, is I think most people go about it the wrong way. They try to get into it for a quick buck instead of looking at it as a longer game. And my philosophy was, we're going to lead with the product instead of leading with people making money. In other words, the pitch was, hey, get on the product, fall in love with it, and then you get an emotional attachment to the product, so that when the money's not there, because it's not always going to be there, you may have a really rough start like I did, but you're going to stay the course because you believe in what you're doing, versus the people that come in that I've found over the years, they come into the organization for making money and they don't ever really believe in their product or believe in their mission. Then when they have a rough go, which is inevitable, they leave. So that creates attrition, that creates instability in an organization. So we just went about it a different way, and that paid dividends over the course of the long haul.
Wow. So playing the long game is something that most people don't actually understand from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I think they consider entrepreneurship as you would a job, right? You show up, you clock in, and at the end of 2 weeks, you get that paycheck. But when you're investing, when you're an entrepreneur, I don't think those things actually connect. Has that been your experience? Because I know that's not the only business that you've been in over the course of your career.
Jerome, let me, I'm sorry, my apologies. Let me cage the dog. I really apologize.
Right.
Yeah, so great question. I had two different tales of this, right? Because I have two different companies that I've gotten involved with. Like I explained, I had a really rough go in starting the direct sales business. I mean, it wasn't until like 8 months into where I really had even a few $100s a month coming in. And then about 5 years ago, I started in real estate and, just crushed it out of the gate very, very quick. I was referring investors and selling properties to investors. And so, I mean, first year, I think the first 12 months, I made like almost $1 million doing that. So when people ask me, like, how did you do that? Well, the reason why that happened is because the last 20 years, the way I showed up to people that they knew, they liked, and they trusted me. So it wasn't that like, it wasn't an overnight success. It was 20 years of building up my personal brand to where people really said, okay, like I can do business with Jack. I can trust him. I know that he's, like he's going to do what he says he's going to do. So that business exploded. So I think what too many people come into entrepreneurialism thinking is that, well, yeah, I'm going to just crush it right out of the gate. And most of the time that doesn't happen. Now in the real estate, I had a really, really incredible first year, but then like everything broke after that. So the next, like year 3, year 4 were super rough. Like we were losing money. So even people like get a really, really good start in business, and then sometimes your ego gets, in the way, or you just start thinking that, oh yeah, you're the man, you're incredible, and then you make mistakes. You don't see things because of that, and it can work against you as well. So I'm totally fine with a business where if I start it not making money right away, because I realize that if I do it the right way and build a solid foundation, that I'm coming into this with a 5-year kind of time plan. That's the same way I would treat any investment that I make as well. I'm not really looking to make a huge big hit up front. I'm looking for where's it going to be 5 years from now.
Wow. So one didn't work in the beginning, then started working really well later. The other one worked really fast and then slowed down a little bit.
Yeah,
And hopefully the other one was kind of covering the stuff while this one wasn't working.
that's
And
exactly what
then
happened.
you end up in utopia where everything's working and now you can make 5-year plays. Am I getting that right?
You got it right. That is exactly right. So now I'm on my third company, which is more of I call it, we go from survival mode when we first kind of get started in life. This was kind of me in the, like early 20s, where I was just trying to pay bills, right? I was just trying to keep my head above water. And then we go into we start to see some success, where, man, this is worth it. Like I'm starting to make some pretty decent revenue and money. And then you hit this point where you're like, you've got the success, but yet something's kind of missing. You feel a little bit empty. And that's where we move into the third and final stage, which is the most important, I think, which is significance. This is where our whole life is then transitioned from, oh, I got to get mine, to I want to teach other people how to get theirs. So Indestructible Wealth, the new company, is a significance play. Essentially, it's me saying, okay, how can I give back to and bless other people and teach them, all the things that I've learned the hard way over the last 24 years? How can I help compress their learning curve, maybe compress it down into 5 years, and help them avoid a lot of the very, very costly mistakes that I've made? So it's a teaching and education platform to give back. Now, am I in it to not make revenue, make a profit? No, that's not true. Like I want it to be a profitable venture. But what I'm most concerned about is giving back and that fulfillment. The best quote I ever heard about business is, success comes from what you get and fulfillment comes from what you give. And once I really internalized that and really thought about it, I'm like, wow, like I'm just not giving enough back. I'm not giving enough back. And that's why I've got this little bit of feeling of kind of emptiness.
Yeah. And you know how we usually try to fill those holes with the emptiness? With a bunch of things.
Alcohol.
Ooh, that's a scary one. That's the numbing of it all.
Yeah.
You can't feel the highs if you numb the lows.
Yeah.
And I think most people totally miss that. So who showed up to help you along the way? Because I mean, it seems like you were doing things that you didn't like go to school and learn how to do. You were figuring it out, but did you have mentors and kind of guides along the way, or how'd you figure it out?
I did have lots of mentors in various capacities. What I found, Jerome, is that I did get some great advice, but I also got some extremely, what I call, misguided advice. So my original idea for my new platform was, I was going to call it the guided investor, but everybody was like, no, you got to go Indestructible Wealth. Because the concept to me of a guided investor is that they're getting the right advice along their path of their journey that they need. And I felt like, looking back over the course of time, a lot of the mistakes and a lot of the investments that went, sour on me were predominantly from just misguided advice. So I want to go back. I want to travel back in time and teach people, what I learned, and how to really get them on the right track and keep them there.
Man. Okay. And so I gotta ask, because you brought it up, what's the worst advice you've ever got?
There's two. When I was, I would have been 22. I had hustled all the way through college. I saved up $50,000 in cash, which is no easy feat, to do as a 19, 20, 21-year-old. There's lots of temptations when you have, money coming in. But I was super cheap, right? So I wouldn't buy anything. I mean, I was still wearing my high school basketball shoes going through college. And all my friends were making fun of me, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to save the money. I'm going to invest it and I'm going to grow it. I'm going to get wealthy, quick, right? So I took the $50,000, most of it, I put it into the stock market, and I just followed a financial advisor, what he told me to do. He said that stocks always go up over the long term. So I didn't even know where he was placing my money. He put it all into tech stocks. That was the year 2000. That was the dot-com bubble burst. Within 4 months, my money had dropped in half, right? It was pretty devastating. All that effort and energy and time and everything I put into that, and the discipline of saving, and then just to have it go poof, half of it gone, was so frustrating. And I realized then that, I was financially unintelligent. I was not financially educated. It's not that financial advisors are all bad. Some are great, some are awful, just like every profession. But I wasn't financially intelligent enough to be able to discern the difference between good advice and bad advice. So I knew that I needed to get financially intelligent and financially sophisticated, like Robert Kiyosaki talks about in Rich Dad Poor Dad. So that was the one major thing, is listening to others without really having the knowledge myself to know the advice I was getting was good or bad. The other scenario that happened was about 5 years ago. I started into real estate. And so I said, yeah, everything, I was talking about how everything went really good out of the gate. Well, it turned out that the guru that I was partnered up with, that he was kind of providing the houses that I was selling, he was running a Ponzi scheme. So he would take investor money, and then instead of using that to fix the houses up, he would just be paying out fake rents to the investors. So everybody thought, this is incredible. I'm getting my rent checks every month. Everything's working. And deep underneath it, like behind the curtain, once you pulled back the curtain, it was really, really ugly. So eventually, like any type of business or any type of investment that's not built on fundamentals and solid long-term, plays, it crashed. So overnight, me and all of the investors that, I brought in that trusted me, they, like, their rent checks went from 100% down to 20% of rents. I mean, it was crazy, just collapsed overnight because, well, there weren't actually real tenants in the properties. So that was the big mistake I made, is that I trusted, but I didn't verify. And I tell people all the time in business, if you're going to partner with somebody, then you got to trust people, but you also want to verify that what's their background like, what's their past like, how have they typically shown up? Because what I found is, like the scorpion, they can't change their ways. They're gonna sting the frog. They can't help it. That's who they are. So I found that, and people can change. I'm not saying that people can't change, but I want to be, if I know somebody is a scorpion and that's who they are, I want to know that going into it, so that I can be very careful and protect myself and not get into situations like what I got in. And that cost me, that was a couple hundred, 300 grand that it cost me. I don't even know. I didn't ever add it up because I couldn't face it. So it was bad.
So, that for a lot of people would be like, I'm throwing in a towel. I'm never doing this again. But you decided to keep going. What happened that got you to the place where you knew you had to keep going? I call this the red pill moment.
Yeah, my pastor explained it to me, because I sat down with them and I'm like, wow, how did this happen to me? What went wrong? And what did I miss? What did I not see? And then why did I spend a year, 2 years, essentially 2 years? My partner and I spent 2 solid years just trying to figure out how to get everybody, dig them out, and try to get as much of their money back as we possibly could. And we did that for a lot of people, but it was no shortage of effort. So we did hang in there. We did hang in there pretty good. And he said, look, you valued your name above money. You said you valued your reputation. So that's why you were willing to lose money and spend time, money, and effort and energy to get people back to whole. And he said, you valued that over money. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just your values really showed and became really apparent. So the other thing he told me was that bad roots produce bad fruits. So I was like, wow, what does that mean? And then I realized that, most of my life I had always been trying to prove something, like that I always didn't think I was like good enough, or that I compared myself to other people. So I was in this mode of just relentlessly pursuing success to prove not only to myself, but prove to other people that I was good enough, that I was like, that I could be successful. And so I really had to do like a deep dive and try to like get that belief system and thought process out of my mind, heart, body, soul, right? All of those things, so that I could like move forward and really enjoy life, and not just constantly I need the next sale, I need the next deal, I need the next thing to be able to prove myself to prove to others that I'm I'm good enough.
So where did that come from? The not being good enough? Was it, prizing as a kid so that your parents would pay attention? Like where did that come from?
I think it's just, no, it wasn't from my parents. I think it was just competitive nature. Like I am the most hyper competitive person that I've ever met. A lot of people tell me that. And so that's good. That can be a great strength, but it's your best strength is usually your greatest liability at the same time. So that wasn't channeled and harnessed and utilized correctly. And it got unchecked. And then it just it's like an avalanche going down the mountain. It just started growing in power and magnitude. And so I realized that that wasn't serving me. I wasn't happy and joyful and living a great life by constantly just, oh, I got to make more money. I got to get the next thing. Once I realized that through this whole process, adversity really shows us who we really are. And like, it's a really great thing. When you're going through it, you don't think it's so great. But once you get on the other side of it and you can look back with hindsight, I think most of us can say it's typically a pretty good thing for the long course if you're playing the long game.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I said I was grateful for my biggest struggle. And when I was in it, like I hated everything
Oh
about
yeah.
it. I
Yeah,
was
for
like, this
sure.
is ridiculous. And to the point of how could this happen to me? Like, what made me such a bad person that this happened to me? And then I think about the life that was created on the backside. I was like, well, I never would have done that had this not happened. So
Sure.
man.
100%. I'm aligned.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been up and down and kind of worked through all the stuff. Like what's been your worst fear in the process? How'd you break through it?
I think the worst fear that I had was that like I'd have all these people like that would hate me, like that, or they didn't think I did enough. And I think that was probably a mistake too, is, because that almost killed me. I mean, honestly, like I was in a very severe depressed state going through the whole process of trying to rectify, everyone's situation. So hindsight would have been to just say, hey guys, I'm so sorry that this happened. I did the best that I could. I didn't know that this was going to happen. You guys just need to take your losses, as part of investing, sell your properties or do whatever you think is best with them. And, that's it. Right. And instead I took it as a personal, like, thing that I took it upon my shoulders that I had to be the one to fix everything. And so I don't know to this day if I made the right move, because it did cost me 2 years, right, of my life essentially. But I know this, like I can definitely sleep well at night, knowing that I did everything I possibly could to be a great person and to, rectify as best I possibly could. And I can definitely live with that. So on that side of it, I feel pretty good about how I responded to the adversity, right? So the only thing that we can all do, like I can't go back in time and make any other decisions. All I can do is just say, you know what? You did the best that you possibly could with the knowledge and tools that you had at the time. And forgive yourself for any mistakes you made, learn from them and move on.
So the ability to forgive yourself when you make a mistake or you get misled is one that I think a lot of people have trouble with. They
Sure.
feel like they need to be perfect. They decide that they can't be kind with themselves. And they say things like, how could you be so stupid? Or how did you not know that? Instead of actually knowing that they did what they could with what they had. what allowed you to get to the place where you could forgive yourself? Because that's not easy.
No, my mentors, and this was up until, 4 or 5 months ago, because I kept recycling it over and over. It was, why did you do that? Why did you do business with this person? Why did you make like I just kept going over and over the same repeated story over and over. And my business life coaches, they said, look, what you need to do is go back in time and have a conversation with yourself and just say to yourself, hey, dude, you did the best that you could with what you knew at the time. And, hey, look, I forgive you. You're going to learn from it. You're going to grow stronger, and you're going to potentially be able to turn this into something great because of the knowledge that you have now. So this isn't serving you to act and keep rewinding this story over and over again. That helped me a lot. Like that, just having that conversation with myself. I just mentally went back and was talking to myself. It worked, and I feel great and light and free. And we're gonna move forward, and I'm gonna bless other people by the knowledge and kind of sharing my experiences. And that, honestly, like, I don't know if Indestructible Wealth actually would have ever, like, I wouldn't probably have launched this platform, which I'm super excited about, had that not gone through that whole experience, because that adversity led me to say, you know what, I want to teach other people how to avoid this type of situation so that they don't have to go through the same thing, right? Like maybe they're going to go through other stuff, but they don't have to go through the same stuff that I did, because I'm going to teach them.
Yeah, I'm torn because there's two different places I want to go right now. I think I'll ask this question because it's going to keep everything succinct. So, what could you have done, or what would you have done different if you knew then what you know now? Like you said, you didn't verify, but how could you have verified when you're working with a thought leader, air quotes on thought leader?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't call him a thought leader. He was definitely he was a business guy. If I would have done a background check, something simple like that, I'm sure I would have uncovered some things that would have put up some pretty big red flags. And I never did that. I never really looked into his past and did, if you're doing, big business with somebody like that, I think it's important to do a background check just to see what kind of person that you're dealing with, because they can oftentimes leave a lot of clues. If you're doing $100, $200 transaction with somebody, do you need to do a background check? No. But if you're getting into a business partnership where there's a substantial amount of time, energy, and money that you're investing, I would strongly encourage anyone to do that.
Got it. So, okay, that takes me to the other place I want to go. So, I don't think this was a rock bottom, right? Your reputation was on the line. It might have been tarnished a little bit, but I don't think that was kind of the place where everything was at risk. Did you have one of those moments on this journey? Because you've been doing it a long time, and it sounds like you've been doing some high ticket stuff. So you may have been in that position where your back was against the wall.
I would say that rock bottom has hit multiple times, throughout my business and entrepreneurial career. I don't see anybody in entrepreneurialism, in all likelihood, being able to avoid getting to that place. I think it was as close to rock bottom as I could say that I've ever gotten, because I was certainly in danger of losing all of the investments and everything that I had at that time. So I was in a precarious situation for sure. I feel like I had some great people on my side that kind of worked and coached me through it. And my wife and I were generous givers. We give generously to lots of causes, our church, feeding the hungry, young life, like lots of different things. So I feel like we were protected a bit in that way, that we were given the right kind of resources and people along the way to help pull us through that predicament.
Wow. And so it's just kind of the circulation of energy. You're putting good out into the world and it's coming back to you in the times where you need it.
Yes.
And so many people just want to make withdrawals out of their empty bank accounts. I don't think that ever actually works. You actually have to put something in order to get something out.
I can't believe, Jerome, how many people that I've heard about, come into contact with, that have, that defraud people, including myself. I mean, I've had people, say, hey, they borrow $1,000 from me. I promise I'll pay you back. Multiple times that's happened. They don't pay back. I've had people, attempt. There's always so many attempts at, hacking your credit cards, or there's so many instances of it. I'm like, where are all these people? Like, there's so many of them out there. It's crazy. And then conversely, the vast majority of people are good humans and they don't do that, right? But it just seems like there's a lot. And so I thought about, like, wow, these people that come up with these ideas, if they would just put the same energy and thought patterns that they put into defrauding people, if they put it into putting, as you said, deposit into the bank of, goodness and karma, right? What they would be able to achieve would be mind-boggling, because some of the stuff that I see, like, you have to be super intelligent and work really hard at coming up with a plan to defraud somebody. I mean, I'm like, I couldn't have thought of that. I'm not that smart. Like, if you would have just taken that same energy and put it into something to create good, you'd be wealthy beyond your wildest imagination. So yeah, I never get that. You know what? Here's what I think about that. I don't understand it. I'll never understand them. I don't want to understand them. They're going to do what they're going to do. And I'm not going to be a part of that game.
What's up, tribe? It's your host, Jerome. I just want to let you know that we put together a free 15-point checklist for exiting the matrix. Jump on over to dreamshouldbereal.com in order to pick your free copy up. Let's get back to the show.
So okay, so I'm one of those silly, naive people who believe that most people in the world are good. I can hear it in your tone and your voice. You think the same thing. Where did that irrational belief come from? Because everybody that I talk to, like, no, the world's a bad place. Like, most people are looking to figure out how they can take advantage of you, but you still give, and you know that they may not pay you back. You still offer that you offer generously. But why? Especially if you've had so many experiences where they didn't go the way you wanted them to go.
I believe that anything that I give with a good heart, like with the right motive and the right intentions, that one way or another, it's going to come back to me 10x down the line. You have to really have a strong belief and faith in to be able to do that. But I've seen it play out over and over again, where I'm like, where did that blessing come from? How did that happen to me? I'm not all that smart. Like, how did that go my way? So I just have that firm belief, like all the way down to my very core, that if I just keep putting good out and keep putting good value out there, that it's going to come back to me and I'm going to be blessed.
Yeah, it's all energy. It circulates.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see it play out. So, let's move into the health part of the conversation. You went down, you came up, you mentioned alcohol and kind of numbing stuff, but how'd you stay healthy, or how did you get healthy through all the ups and downs? Because, I mean, the peaks and the valleys can be intense, man. So, like,
Yeah.
what have you done to put your body in peak state, your body and your mind in peak state so that you can go out in the world and face it?
I've had really good habits that I've established, for a long time. So, being in the nutrition field, I've always worked out. It's always been a habit. Even a lot of times I don't want to go, but I'd say most days I don't want to work out, right? So just being honest, but it's just a habit and a discipline. I have a routine with my eating and meal plans that it's just the habitual way that I eat. I don't have to like eat a bunch of processed food. We never go through fast food. So just lots of great habits that we have lined up. I'm not perfect by any stretch. I love pizza night on Friday night. I love, I do love to have a kick back some cocktails. I do know, like, when I was going through the rough times, I mean, I definitely abused to a certain point, not to where I don't feel like I needed to, get professional help, but I was probably on the borderline to that. And, one thing that hit me, one of the guys that I follow, I love his podcast, Mike Dillard. He just made one comment that it really hit me like a ton of bricks as far as alcohol goes. He said, anytime you drink alcohol, you're just borrowing from tomorrow. And just that simple statement, I'm like, I've never lived my life where I want to borrow from tomorrow. Like, I always want to invest today so that tomorrow's better. Everything I've ever done is like, the things I'm doing today is I'm trying to create tomorrow to be better. So if I have too much alcohol or too often, right? I think all moderation in all things. But if I do it too often, then I'm borrowing from my future. That's never worked out well for anybody that borrows from their future. When you put money, when you charge things on your credit card that you don't have the cash to pay, you borrowed from the future for today. When's that ever worked out for anyone, right? When you skip the gym and you eat all the junk consistently, you're putting on the extra lbs. You're borrowing from your future health, energy, and vitality. I don't want to borrow. I want to invest.
Ooh.
And trust me, I'm not perfect on any of those things. But
there is no perfection. It's just striving to be better than you were today.
Right.
But the thought of you're taking time that you have in the future and you're using it in advance of when you're actually supposed to have it. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, right? You're shortening your lifespan. Like, most people don't think that way in any way, shape, or form. So that one hit home in a major way. And so, man, there's so many places I can go with you, Jack. Yeah. Early on, you mentioned like you're in a bunch of different asset classes and different streams of income. Kind of walk down the process of kind of how all the sacrifices that you've made have translated into the prosperity that most people think about, which is, financial. And let's dive into Indestructible Wealth a little bit so people can get a true understanding of what that means.
I could talk about this all day long because this is the passion, right? So what we need to understand about wealth is that, the original meaning behind wealth was well-being. So we have kind of changed it in modern American society to where when we think of wealth, automatically our mind goes to big house, nice luxury car, all the vacations, all the travel. Like, that's where our mind goes. But wealth, if we look at the core meaning of it, just meant an overall well-being to your whole life. So when I talk about money, it's a passion of mine is helping people to figure out how to, essentially go from being a have not to being a have. Look, there's nothing wrong with it. I was a have not when I had $200 in my checking account, right? I mean, it's fine. It's not a judgment or anything. It's like, how do we cross that that gap so that we do have, some resources. And in today's society, it is very important to live the life that we ultimately want to live. We do need to have wealth. And what most people think of when they think of wealth in terms of money is a lump sum amount. Like, okay, if I hit a millionaire or 2 million or whatever that number is, then I'm wealthy. And I don't look at it like that at all, because I don't want to, at some point in my life, like, I don't want to wait to arrive somewhere where I have this lump sum and then I'm 65 or 70 and then maybe I'm not in the peak health years, or right, something could go wrong and along this journey, and then I never really get to enjoy, that lump sum. So I look at wealth as multiple streams of passive income. The average, and I don't know if this is true, I just heard this on a podcast, it makes sense to me. The average millionaire has 7 streams of income. So we have 14, I just counted ours up. We have 14. Now, some of them are very small, but there's still sources of income that are coming into our household. We got one really big one. We got some like kind of in the middle, and then we got several that are just ancillary. And what happens then when you have multiple streams of income flowing in is that you don't have to worry about money anymore. If something happens to one of those streams, how much do you really care? Well, not that much. So where most people are in a predicament, and especially going into the age of technological disruption that we're about to go in over the next decade, when you have one source of income and we have all these things that are going to be starting to come into play that are already forces that are giant tsunamis coming into play, artificial intelligence, technology, all this disruption, you're in a predicament because one source of income just isn't going to cut it anymore. 50 years ago, fine, no problem. Today, it's not going to work. So I have this strategic plan or process that I've kind of come up with, borrowed it from a few people, like, parts of it, and then kind of tweaked it to what I believe has worked really well for me. And it's a 7-step strategic plan to where you can start, with essentially from ground level zero. And if you follow the plan sequentially, then the plan will work. You will definitely, if you've implemented it, you will create wealth. You will create multiple streams of income. May not happen the speed at which you want it, but it'll happen.
Wow. Okay. And so what's the 7 steps, man? You got me on a cliffhanger now.
Okay, cool. We can do it. I'll go through them quick because this is, it could take a while, but I'll go through them fast. So step 1 is increase your earning power. Increase your ability to earn more money by becoming more valuable. What most people that I found that they talk about is called reductionist thinking. They say you're going to get wealthy by cutting back and saving and reducing your expenditures and cutting out the $5 latte. Look, if you enjoy the $5 latte every day, I don't really think that's going to be a significant deterrent to you becoming wealthy, my opinion, right? So that's reductionist thinking. What I suggest people think about is productionist thinking. How can I create more value for other human beings by being of greater service? How do I increase my earning power so that, look, I don't want to cut back anything. Nobody wants to cut back. Households don't want to cut back anything. Government doesn't want to cut anything back. So we got to increase how much income that we have flowing in. Okay, so that's step 1. And I tell people all the time, look, if you're in a W-2 situation, you're a teacher, you're at you're in service, you're a police officer, you're in something where your income is pretty capped and you're maybe going to go up with inflation, then you have to get a side hustle. I mean, if you really have a strong burning desire to create wealth and you're in a capped W-2 situation, then you got to figure out some other way to create additional income. getting there on a W-2 is very, very difficult. So I think, side businesses, side hustles, something you enjoy, that's very, very important. Okay, so that's step one. And then step two is, I call it, you want to attack your bad debts, and you want to accelerate your good debts. So I have this, a lot of people say, like Dave Ramsey, attack debt, attack debt, attack debt. I get where he's coming from that perspective of, there are certain debts that are very, very bad. Consumer debt, is very, very bad. You want to be attacking that. But there are debts that are very, very good. Like, I love debt. And most people don't have that relationship with debt. They think it's bad. Well, there's, like everything in life, there's polarity, right? So there's good and bad with pretty much everything. So there is very bad debt that you want to get rid of. That's your high interest unsecured debt. You're never going to get wealthy if you have, you're paying 10, 15, 20% on credit cards, or for things that, have no asset, that don't produce cash flow. Like, you got to get rid of those out of your life, attack those. And then accelerating good debt. I use debt to buy property. And I know that I've heard that on your show, several people, including yourself, love income producing property. I've absolutely love utilizing debt to buy more income producing assets. So that's step two. Then including, so step three, we'll go to that, is you want to save up to 60% of your income. So a lot of people listen to that and they're like, okay, I'm out. Your plan sucks. I'm not saving, 5%. I'm not saving 10% right now. And what I tell people is this: it's not going to happen right now. You're not going to all of a sudden be able to make any moves to where you're going to all of a sudden save 60% of your income flowing into your house. Not going to happen. What you can do, if you believe that it's important to save more than 10%, because I think it's way too slow to create wealth making 10% off 10%, right? Too slow. You'll get there when you're 70, 80, whatever. I want to get there. I want to help everyone get there faster. So what you're going to do is, you increase your income, you're going to keep your expenses in check. You're not going to go out and get the bigger house. You're not going to go out and upgrade the car. If anything, you're going to stay right where you're at. Or, I drove a used Mercedes with 135,000 miles on it. It cost like $5,000, right? I was making really good money, but I was driving a car that, it was pretty inexpensive car, right? And I wanted to bank and get to that 60% so that I could save more money and then put that money to work. And then the income coming off of that would pay for the Tesla, right? So now I drive a Tesla, but I earned it because my cash flow producing assets are paying the monthly payment on the Tesla. So I went through that multi-year period of not driving what I could have driven so that I could drive something even much greater and better later. So I didn't borrow from my future, right, Jerome?
I love it. I love it.
So then step four is, here's what the wealthy think. The wealthy think safety first, okay? But you definitely want to be taking some small strategic swings for the fences. So this is where you take a small percentage on step four and you invest into some asset classes that could go, what I call go parabolic, okay? So these are your cryptocurrencies. These are your small tech stocks. Those are kind of the two that come to mind the most. Pre-IPOs, those just got opened up over the last year or two to where everyday retail investors like us, we can buy into companies before they go on the IPO process. And that's where a lot of big money, that's where venture capitalists make probably the wealthiest people on the planet, because they get in on the company before it goes public. So those are the types of things you want to take. I say, like, if you're under 30, you could go up to like 20, maybe 30% of your total principal money. You could invest into these smaller risk, but higher risk, but yet way higher reward type plays. And then step 5 is you're going to take the majority of your principal money that you're saving and your investable dollars, and you're going to invest it into cash flow, solid, stable, producing assets. The wealthy think safety first. That's their number one mantra. They want to protect their money. They want to create safety, and they want cash flow coming in off their investable assets. So you got all this cash flow coming in, multiple streams of cash flow. You're buying blue chip dividend stocks. You're buying, rental properties, a syndication where you're pooling your money with other investors into apartment buildings or self-storage projects. You're buying a whole life high cash value insurance that so freaking boring. It kicks off 4-5% dividends. It's so boring, but it creates stability. It creates additional streams of income. So you do that. And then step 6 is where it really gets fun, because that's where you get to really, you get to take some swings for the fences. So this is where you're going to take the cash flow from your cash flow producing assets, and then you're going to put a chunk of that cash flow back into what's called asymmetric bets. An asymmetric bet is where you invest $1 to create $100. You invest $10 to create $100,000. These types of things are out there. We definitely think that only ever happens to other people. But I got to tell you real quick, Lance, the landscaper, came into our little smoothie shop that my wife and I run in town. And this guy, struggling landscaper, he bought up 10 Bitcoin at $1,000 a piece and 100 Ethereum at like $10 a piece. Okay, this is a guy, so he spent, he invested, I want to say 20 grand, and his current portfolio of cryptocurrency is worth, I'd say almost $1 million now. And this is the guy that I know for a fact struggles big time in his business. He's told me about it many times. Well, when I heard him say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, all I've been doing is safety only, cash flow only. And I could have taken a small chunk of the income coming in from my assets and said, let it rip, man. Let's go. Let's swing for the fences. I could have done the same thing, but I didn't think about like I wasn't thinking strategically. So I started a little bit later, but in December, I started going into cryptocurrency with a small but reasonable percentage, right? Just like I'm telling you on this plan. And that's up like, I don't know, 300% just in 4 or 5 months. So, and if it goes to zero, it's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, cause I'll just replenish the money again from the rest of the plan. And then, so that's step 6. And then step 7 is repeat steps 1 through 6 until you're wealthy, and always remember to give back along the journey. You're never going to have really enough. How much is enough? Just a little bit more, as they say, right? So you want to make sure that you're not waiting until you arrive at some destination to give. Like, we've always been philanthropists. You don't have to be. Philanthropy is a way of life. It's not a place that you arrive at. You don't need to be a mega multi-millionaire, billionaire to be a philanthropist. You can make $100 and give 10 of it, and you can be engaging in philanthropy. You can be a philanthropist. And that, to me, is the greatest joy of wealth, is being a part of that giving back process and creating that energy that I'm putting out into the universe, that money is abundant. I can release it. I don't need to hoard it. I know that I can generate more. I know that I'm going to be blessed. I have to trust the process. I have to trust the higher power. Let it rip, and let it flow back to me when I'm ready to receive more. And then the other part of step 7 to close out is keep your ego in check. It's not your money anyways. Like, we know it's not your money because at some point you're going to arrive to a place where all your money is going to be divvied up and given to other people. maybe you control that, maybe you didn't set that up to control it, but we know that at some point it's all going away. So you're just a temporary custodian. You have temporary control over it, but it's not really yours because it's God's money. So like, let it rip and keep that ego in check. Otherwise, ego is, I call it, ego is your greatest overhead.
That's awesome, man. 7 steps to getting wealthy. Man, that's good stuff. I like 7. Keep doing it until you get what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I tend to use 4 questions to close it out. And the first one is, what are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for, I have to say, my wife for sure, because it takes a special woman to put up with an entrepreneur who has big ups and big downs. And I was asked the question, what's your biggest success? I was in a bachelor party, down in Florida, we were golfing and the guys were picking my brain. They know I've done well in business. They said, what's your greatest accomplishment? I said, it's not business, guys. It's the deep connection and incredible relationship I have with my wife. I would trade all of my money for that relationship if I were presented that I had to choose.
Priorities.
Yeah.
Priorities. Man, most people, I won't even go down the path. We don't have time.
Yeah, we know what most people would choose. Yeah.
Jack, what dream are you most focused on catching that?
I don't have any influence, Jerome, in terms of like, I don't have a platform to get my message out. I feel like I have something to say. I feel like that I could really bless a lot of people. And I have 2,000 friends on Facebook that all they've heard from me enough, right? And beyond that, I have a lot of people, in that side of that space that do respect me and they do look to me for advice and they message me all the time, and it's great. And I love doing that. But I haven't scaled my influence. I haven't been able to scale my message. So my big dream is I want to get my platform, to a big level where I'm blessing a lot of people. And I don't know what that looks like, how many that looks like, because right, how much is enough? It'll be just a little bit more, right? But I just, that's killing, it's like not killing me, but it's really created this burning desire inside my heart that like, I want to be significant for other people.
Got to go to scale, making that play.
Yeah.
Making that play. What gift are you giving the world?
Well, I'm 43 now, so I want to say it's probably experience. And experience usually means I've made mistakes and I'm going to teach you and help you learn from my mistakes. And I've had wins too. And I'm going to teach you my wins and how did I go about creating the wins that I've created. It's important to learn from both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really reflects on the wins. They just move on to the next thing when they're apex performers. They're just go, go, go. But I think you can learn lessons on both sides.
That's
100% aligned there.
Yes.
Before we wrap it up with the last question, I just want to tell you, man, I appreciate your authenticity. I appreciate your transparency because a lot of people are scared to talk about the things that didn't go as planned. And they hide from it, they shy away from it. But I think what you did was show how a person can make it right, how a person can choose their reputation over the money. And I think anytime you do that, you'll never end up having to worry about money because your reputation is what precedes you when it comes to making money, man. So thank you so much for sharing with me.
Reputation leads to revenue.
Yeah.
Reputation leads to revenue.
For sure. And so the final question is, what's the one thing you want the listeners to take away from this episode?
I'm sorry, one more time.
What's the one thing you want the listeners to take away from this episode?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? I think that in terms of what you just said, most people, their biggest desire in life, what's getting in their way, is their desire to look good. So men want to be respected. That's their number one need, desire. That's everything to a man. He wants to be respected. How does he go about getting respect? He wants to look good. He doesn't want to show that, he's made a lot of mistakes. He wants to show that he's got this, super fast, incredible car that, like, all these material objects. And so that's getting in the way, though, of them being able to really become their greatest self. So ego is your biggest overhead. And that desire for respect is certainly getting in the way of a lot of men to be able to really provide the level of impact that they could on other people. What I found, Jerome, is that when I'm authentic and I share my struggles and the things that I had to go through, that's when people come up to me after a speech, or that's when people message me on Facebook, or that's when people are like, man, that was amazing. I didn't know that about you. I just thought there was always, like, you just always win. It's, people, their perception is typically not reality. So as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's really trying to make a difference in the world, if, as a W-2 earner, whatever the case, somebody looking to build wealth, just being able to embrace and your wins and your losses, being authentic about it, but making sure that you keep that desire to look good in check, because that's what's going to really slow you down. That's what's going to hurt you.
Man, what a solid way to end this episode of the Dream Catchers podcast. Jack, you gave us a ton of wisdom, drop all kinds of nuggets. So hopefully the listeners have their notepad out and put some of this stuff down on the pad, and then they'll put it into practice. And to the listeners, until the next time, your dreams should be real. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for joining the tribe today. We would love to hear from you. Please don't forget to rate, like, and share. Perhaps someone you know could benefit from what we've discussed. Until the next time, remember that your dreams should be real.